That's the France Inter, all this, they propagated all the news. And the soldier have to stop because the ICC, the International Criminal Court, send people to verify. You know, you put pygmy, most excluded group, anthropophage, and so it makes really a real effect on the world. And actually, they managed to stop the progression of the rebels. I asked the bishop, because he was involved, they actually manufactured this news. He said that was the only way to stop him. So they were very clever enough to stop him. So that's how this place, despite the war around, managed to keep a self-sustaining kind of transnational trade. And actually they invest back home. That's what surprised me. And if you see the life of these traders, they have beautiful houses. That's the only thing which show that they are rich, because they're coming from a tradition. In another tradition, you were allowed to have more land or more houses than the Mwami. The Mwami is the chief. That's different from South Kivu. You can't have more things than the chief. But there, you are allowed to have more houses, except you can't have more wives than the Mwami. But so there is a kind of entrepreneurial spirit, tradition. But be modest. You can't show up. That's why when you are in the car, you will not see who is the boss, who is the millionaire. Most of the time, I was always better dressed than my interlocutors. So there is a kind of modesty in that place. And even when you enter the house, I remember I was invited one day to watch, I think, the final between Italy and France in one of the millionaires' house. I went there in the evening. He have a fontaine with blue color lights. I say, wow, this is it looks like California. And then I was saying to myself, okay, if the house is like this, how the dinner will be? I mean, it's a wow, it would be kind of the French coq au vin or all that. But when we went for the dinner, it was maragi. Maragi is beans, exactly what the poorest of the poor in Butembo eats. So culturally, traditionally, they remain exactly the same. And during the dinner, we were talking with so the wife and this trader and myself, and I asked the wife this question: say, are you a co-owner of the things of your husband? She didn't answer. He answered. He said, these are Western questions. What do you want to me? But at the end, she talked to me. She said, I have the power. I don't have the power to hire somebody, because if this person has a problem, it will fall on me. But I have the power to fire. If I don't like somebody, he should go. He should go. So that's kind of to see a little bit the gender relations. So that place, in the midst of war, you have these traders and the church and the militia trying to bring kind of social cohesion. But there is a black side to that, because they trade gold, and you also have gold all around, which doesn't belong in the Nanda area. The Nanda trader buy this gold, because this gold usually is controlled by other militia who are fighting around. So sometimes the Nanda will buy gold, sometimes with cash or in exchange with weapons. So they are also actually financing the war around. One of them were actually killed just when I left, because he was making deal with Museveni's son-in-law to bring weapons to the rebels in exchange of gold. So this community, which is isolated from all, were at the same time, not all of them, but some of them were actually involved in the prolonging the war by bringing weapons in the region. This is the one side. Another part is that it's not peaceful. Of course, the traders are one of the elites in a community, but you have two other elites. The natural elite, quote unquote natural elite, are educated ones. Those who have gone through traditional education institutions. They speak very nice French, but because the country is down, they are not paid. So the traders have more say in the community than intellectual, the university professors or the high school professors. And this brings a lot of tension in the community. The other elite is what I call the customary elite. This is a very rural, used to be very rural place, community. So the elders have significant position in the community, but they are losing it in favor of traders. Usually in this community, they have what they call family meeting every 2 months. The family will gather, discuss about the family issues. Before, a few years ago, if the eldest of the family is there, you start the meeting. But today, if the richest person of the family is not there, you postpone the meeting. So you could feel that there is a shift. This merchant elite is taking over. And this is not only about the elite, the whole community is being very, very mercantilized. For young people, the model is no longer the teacher or the professor of school, but it's the traders. We have an anecdote. It's 20 years ago when you date a girl, she asks you 2 questions. Who are your parents and where do you study? Today, they ask you 2 questions. Where is your shop and when is your next trip to Dubai? Yeah. So it's a kind of, the whole community is being mercantilized. That's okay. That's what I observe. Now, if you see the Congo in general, it's called, you have a lot of literature, it's collapse state, failed state. My question is that, okay, what have failed? In the literature on failed states, I think there is 3 mistakes first. The first one, when they talk about failed state, it's very misleading. It looks like, okay, it used to be integrated before and now it's falling apart. Nowhere in Africa the Weberian states actually have taken hold completely. Even Mobutu, as Hannah said, was not controlling it. So it's really, it's not true. It's never been kind of what we have, an integrated state, and now it's falling apart. But the biggest mistake I found with the failed state theory is that it conflates the failed government with the failed governance. The fail of the state with the fail of the society. In this case, the state was completely not functioning, but people managed to govern themselves with actors, non-state actors. They managed to organize. So society have resources. And thirdly, when people talk about failed states, they take non-failed states as a normative good. What is a non-failed state? The Weberian model of states having the monopoly over violence, state in a territory control, it's a form. This definition comes from this whole Westphalian state with sovereignty over territory. But you could also define a state with Rousseau as being a social contract. For me, the state is a form of social relations. It's a relation between people. It's much more flexible than the rigidified form of a Weberian state people want to impose to see come. Why are they saying this? Because we have 17,000 UN peacekeepers in the Congo. When they came, the theoretical assumption is that we're going to collapse state, we're going to restore the state. That's the policy wing. If you read William Zatman, one of the solutions to the failed state is to restore the pre-failed order. So without seeing what was happening before, what the UN did, they organized presidential elections. We elected the president in 2006, But the war continues, the killing continues until now. When I asked them, but why you didn't start by maybe local election to see what was happening when these things collapsed, and then maybe build from there? Because I told them that, you know, the most successful building made top down, you know what? The most successful infrastructure made top down is the grave. You agree with me, no? How can you build, restore state from the top? No, that's why I'm saying that, I mean, this failed state concept, it's kind of, we have fetishized, as Mike would say, this form, which have taken kind of a life of its own, and now we think that we need to import it. That's, I mean, it's working here, why it shouldn't work there? So let's impose it. Maybe even for democracy it's the same thing. Why not to impose it for all means? But for me, state is a relative term which depends on the fight, on the relations on the ground. The state comes from what people do with their relations on the ground. They fight on the ground, something which raised from the top. I'm a student of Charles Tilly, who show us that the state actually begin from this relationship, and it's been at some point it has been objectified. So okay, this way it works, and we have rigidified this in the point to kind of what I say, to encapsulate the political subjectivity within one form. Why? If it doesn't work, this works. So that's my challenge, actually, theoretical challenge with this ethnographic example. That human political subjectivity is so flexible that we cannot unframe it on one form, the Weberian one, with a rational state, with the three power, judiciary. No, it depends on what's happening on the ground. So it failed only for people with kind of statist fantasies for them. So for me, this is not failed. So usually the anthropologists who criticize my work tells me that you are converting the choir, preaching the choir. And my answer is that because we have these 7,000 UN peacekeepers doing exactly the same, it means that the choir was not converted. We still have work to do. So in the conclusion, I see that in the midst of the chaos, it's possible. These people show us that it's possible to construct a peaceful, orderly, economically organization. That's possible. Second, I'm very interested to see how this network of trust, because there is a kind of breakdown of trust on all levels. And now there is a reconstitution of trust in local level by these people. So I'm very interested to see how it could impact the other levels. And this, I think, should not be only an African issue. If we see the whole financial crisis here, it's about trust. What is written in the book is not what is in the coffers, Aaron and all this bubble. There's a breakdown of trust. So we need to study how the reconstitution of trust from the local level could reach the other levels. That's how I think it could be also, this lesson could be also important for us. So I thank you and leave the time for questions.